Today we're looking into a kind of a surprise from GeForce and Novation. GeForce has released a software recreation of the synthesizer Bass Station, done in collaboration with Novation. Now, before we dive in, just let's remember that the original Bass Station was a small, portable, analog synthesizer, small keyboard, small panel, aimed for real-time control of an analog synth. That was in 1993, at a moment in time where digital synthesizers were kings and sampler was taking all the space. So having an analog device with knobs was kind of different, that's for sure. It was mainly, I believe, made to answer the call from those who wanted to have a TB303 sounding like, not a clone, because it's not a clone of the TB303. It doesn't even have the same features, but it can do acid sound really efficiently. So let's actually go in and see how they did it. I have an init sound. If you look at the blue line here, this blue line is basically what you had on the original. And under that, you have more control than the original because why not? GeForce added a lot of extra stuff to it. Like they do for every synth that they recreate, they had a lot of controls. It really opens the box on making other sounds that the original could not do. You have these controls on the side here like portamento, vintage, so how old the circuitry is. Unison, well, you could not have that on the original because the original was monophonic. Now this one can play up to 16 voices. So you can have a polyphonic synthesizer, polyphonic bass station, and then you can use the Unison to have big sounds when they're in a single mode. Single, multi, auto glide, polyphonic, single. And the extra stuff at the top we'll talk after. But let's go back to the synthesis of the Bass Station. You got oscillator 1 here. You have a mix of control over 1 and 2. So if you go totally at the left, you're going to have only oscillator 1, and maximum right, you're going to have only the sound of oscillator 2. So if you have two different waveforms, let's say you have this one here. You have the two of them. You can detune only the second one. Create a little chorus if you want to. You have a sub, so a third oscillator. And this one can be one octave lower or 2 octave lower. And you have a shape you can control for this one. And you can change the octave of the oscillator 2. So oscillator 2, bring this one down. And it can be synced. This is going to be fun later on, but you see. You've got oscillator 2 sub FM. So we got FM synthesis applied on oscillator 2 from the sub. You can create these more aggressive sounds. This is just oscillator 2 being FM modulated by the sub. So this is pretty cool. And then okay, then you have the noise. This is the modulation for oscillator 1 and modulation for oscillator 2. So you got envelope 2 as a source, LFO as a source of modulation. And you have the control that you usually have on LFO. You have the speed. Now this one it's synced or not. Sync to the tempo of the song. And you have the retrig. Retrig meaning every time you press a key, the movement of the LFO is retriggered. So you're always going to have the same shape coming in. Whereas if it's not retrig, every time you press, you're going to pick the LFO where it is on its oscillation, wherever it is. So it's going to be always a little bit changing. So I like that one, especially if I assign it to the filter. We'll go back to that when we're in the filter. And you get different shapes: sine, saw, square, random, and triangular. So classic stuff for the pulse width. So if I choose this one, let's bring that to 0. You can change the width of the pulse width. And if I want to see it, assign LFO to it. It does it without if you assign the envelope. And again, if you go envelope 2, let's say like this, give it more time. Now, if we go back to sync, the cool thing about sync here for oscillator 2 is if you assign envelope here, oscillator 2, so what you're doing here, you're moving the pitch up, but because it's in sync, it goes up and then it glides down. This is the movement without sync, but because it's in sync with the original one, hear the movement if you have this up. This is pretty cool. That's it. That's really fun. You've got the same logic for oscillator 1 and 2 for the modulation. Then we got the filter. Filter, we got a frequency for the cutoff frequency. And it doesn't have any steps, so it's very smooth. And you have a choice of 12 or 24, so 2-pole or 4-pole. And a tracking for the 24, so as you go up the keys, it opens up, and if you go down, close down, it actually moves with this. You go 0 for now. And then you have the resonance. Now that's where and then you have the envelope. So I'm saying that that sound is much more acid sounding, and it distorts so much you can push it to the max. This is mostly what you have, ADSR plus velocity for this, and you have then the modulation for how the pitch bend and the modulation wheel and the velocity and aftertouch can control. Pitch bend control both oscillators, aftertouch, velocity, and modulation wheel control the filter cutoff. So, but it's at 0. Let's say put it like this. Now this sound is fairly acid sounding, but if we add what we have on top here, the distortion. So then you have the other features. You get an high pass filter, again with 24 or 12 dB per octave tracking, resonance, and frequency. You've got their chorus. You have the delay. You have the reverb. And you have presets you can go back. And you can lock these. Let's say you decide to have this distortion, you can lock it, this chorus, and then lock it. And then when you change the patches, these stay the same. And you have the extra modulation, the XLFO and the XADSR. Now this is always super cool from any different synthesizer from GeForce, is that what you do is you click, let's say, filter. And I want my filter to move this way. This is the movement of my filter now. Going from this, but I can change another. I can say I want this to be. I am adding sample and hold on it. I want this to be smoothed. More of it. And this control, it can be retrig or not, can be synced to the tempo of the song. And this exists separately for each of the knobs that you have here. Each of them can have another LFO or a different envelope. So this is just massive. Every time I see this, I'm just like, man, this is just for real. It's a huge synthesizer when you think about it. It's like having, I don't know, 20 different envelopes and 20 different LFOs that are specifically aimed at each of your different points. So it's just massive control. Could be too much at one point. You might go, oh, I don't know what to do with it. Then don't use it. Every time you go, hey, that'd be cool to have this control, you don't have to only use the internal layout that is the one that the original had. You can just repatch. It's kind of a modular synth. You can just repatch a new LFO right there, dedicated to that, and it's not the same as another LFO. So really powerful for that. And you have on the side here, Unison. I'm going to turn off this. I'm going to go back to init sound. Go back to initialize patch. So the original sound is just sounding really nice. It's just massive sounds that are really cool. Really cool sounding. I mean, just add a couple of delay here and but that's not all. That's not all. You also have this here. When you switch, when you click on this, it actually switches the same thing as clicking here. You switch between keys and arpeggiator / sequencer. Again, that wasn't part of the original one. If you add ARP, then it's basically slide the speed of it. You have swing, if you want to have swing. You have an octave. To play one octave you're playing, and then one on top. The mode, down, up and down, random. And probability. 75% of the time it will play. And sequence, then you open up this one here, which is a step sequencer. When you just type in the, what you want. Octave 4, let's move that down. This is the probability. Maybe this one plays half the time. This one plays velocity. You can change the velocity as you want. You can even assign to a scale if you want. And then you have the macros. Let's say we assign this macro to filter. When you select this, you right click and you say, I'm going to go like this. When you put it here and you say, well, this is going to be like that. And when you put it here, right click and assign the movement. So now if you play this sequence that you have here, let's try these different sounds. This is cool. That's it. That's the Novation Bass Station by GeForce. It's a simple synthesizer to learn. It's not just monophonic, it's also polyphonic now, so it's opened up the box to a lot more. And the big pros is you get a lot of other controls when you add the extra that are on top. So the other LFOs, the other envelopes, and the effects built in. If you're looking to get that sound, then Bass Station by GeForce. Stay safe, make my music, and see you soon. Cheers.